Icarus. The temple doors groaned open at first light. Icarus stepped into silence. The noise of Aberranth, the wheels of carts, the bark of vendors, the songs of pilgrims fell away as if a veil had been drawn. A priestess in white robes awaited him at the threshold, her face calm, her eyes carrying both kindness and weight. "You have come far," she said, her voice steady as stone. "Liore receives all who bring their burdens. Come." He followed her through hushed corridors, the air thick with beeswax and the faint iron tang of extinguished candles. Their footsteps echoed, the sound sharp against the cold walls. The scent of incense lingered, not sweet but sharp, like crushed rosemary. They walked until at last she opened a door of blackened oak and guided him through. The altar room was unlike anything Icarus had imagined. No gleaming marble, no gold or jeweled reliquaries. The chamber was carved of dark stone, lit only by candles set in iron sconces. At its center lay a pool, small, circular, still. The liquid shimmered strangely, its surface like moonlight caught in blood. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. The priestess turned to him. "Place your offering in the pool. Liore will know it." His hand trembled as he drew the bundle from his pack. The blue kiss, the herb Ophelia had nurtured for years. Its leaves glowed faintly, even in the dim light. Blue veins alive with their own quiet fire. He thought of her hands in the soil, her patient voice explaining its uses, the mercy it brought to the dying, the peace it granted to those who suffered. Holding it close to his chest, he stepped into the pool. The liquid closed around his boots and ankles. It was warm, not cloying or heavy as he had feared, but gentle, embracing, as though he waded into a hearth's glow. He took another step, then another. With each movement, the weight of his body seemed to lessen, until suddenly, the ground was gone. He fell. The warmth gave way to coolness, then to nothing at all. He tumbled downward through endless dark, the last candlelight vanishing above him. He flailed once, then stilled, for he realized he did not need to breathe. His chest remained calm, his lungs still. Time slipped. He floated, suspended in infinite night. Then, a presence. He felt it first, like the hush before dawn, like a hand brushing unseen across his cheek. Then he saw it, pale, enormous, drawing near. At first he thought it a mask, drifting toward him. A woman's face, flawless and serene. But no, it was no mask. It was a face, vast as the heavens, bending low to see him. Eyes like moons, lips curved with both grief and grace. Liore. When she spoke, her voice carried two tones at once, the trembling lilt of a little girl and the warm crackle of an old woman. "You have come far, Icarus," she said. "You bring me devotion and a gift, long tended with love. I thank you." He raised the blue kiss in his hands, and though he could not see her fingers move, the herb vanished, leaving only emptiness where it had been. "My lady," he whispered, "on the road I felt a power. It rose in me when death was near. Again and again. Was that your hand? Was that your protection?" Her gaze deepened, and for the first time, sorrow seemed to touch the corners of her lips. "No," she said, "though I would gladly claim you, gladly shelter you for the devotion you have shown. Your soul has already been claimed by another, his breath, or what passed for it, caught in his throat." "By whom?" Liore leaned closer still, her eyes vast, her voice soft enough to break him. "When was the last you heard from Ophelia?" The words struck like a stone against glass. Before he could speak, before he could beg for meaning, light seared around him. The darkness shivered, then split, and he was hurled upward, rushing faster than falling stars. With a gasp, He stood once, more at the pool's edge, dry as bone, his boots unsoiled. The chamber lay exactly as it had before, dark stone, candlelight, silence. Only the absence of the blue kiss proved that anything had happened at all. Icarus sank to his knees, trembling, the echo of her words burning in his mind. When was the last you heard from Ophelia? Icarus. The streets of Aberranth were a blur. Icarus walked with no sense of direction, his feet carrying him away from the temple and its dark stone halls, away from the pool that still seemed to cling to his skin though he was dry. The priestess had bid him farewell with quiet grace, but he remembered nothing of her words. His mind replayed only one sentence, again and again, until the world around him dulled to nothing. When was the last you heard from Ophelia? By the time he pushed open the tavern door, night had fallen. Warmth and noise crashed into him at once. Laughter, the clatter of tankards, the low hum of a bard's lute. For a heartbeat he stood frozen, blinking in the lamplight before spotting his companions at a corner table. They saw him before he could compose himself. Brams's hand shot up in greeting, but the gesture faltered when he caught sight of Icarus's face. Luke's brow furrowed. Even Garin, usually quick with a smile, grew quiet. Icarus? Bram rumbled, pushing back his chair. By the gods, you're pale as death. What happened? He wanted to answer. He wanted to sit with them, to drink, to tell them of Leore's gaze and her voice that was both child and crone. But when he opened his mouth, no words came, only a strangled sound that drew more eyes from nearby tables. Bram guided him to a seat, a firm hand on his shoulder. Luke passed him a cup of water. Icarus drank, though it did nothing to steady the tremor in his hands. For a long time, none of them pressed him. They simply stayed near, their concern a silent wall around him. At last, Garin spoke, voice low, careful. You don't have to tell us, friend, but if you do, we'll listen. Icarus pressed his palms against his eyes. He had faced wyverns, bandits, nights in wild places where death breathed down his neck. Never had his companions seen him this scared. It was her, he said finally, his voice raw. Leore, I spoke with her. The dwarf leaned closer, eyes narrowing. And? Icarus swallowed hard. The words tasted like ash. She said, my soul belongs to another, that it isn't her who's been keeping me safe. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to continue. And then she asked me. He broke off, his breath shaking. He lowered his voice to a whisper. She asked me when I last heard from Ophelia. Silence weighed heavy on the table. His companions exchanged glances, their concern sharpening into something else. Wariness, fear, but also fierce loyalty. The dwarf set his hand over Icarus's, clenched fist. Then we'll find out what it means, he said. Whatever it is, you're not carrying it alone. But Icarus barely heard him. His mind was still caught in that dark pool, in Leore's moonlit eyes, in the question that would not let him rest. When was the last you heard from Ophelia? Letter 16, my dearest Ophelia, I pray this letter finds its way to you swiftly, for my heart grows heavier with every passing hour of silence. You know I am not a man easily given to worry, yet I cannot shake the unease that has settled upon me. It has been too long since I last felt your presence or heard from you. And though I tell myself you must be consumed by your healing work, in the village, the quiet gnaws at me all the same. I write to you now, only to assure you of this. I have kept my promise. The offering you entrusted to me is delivered, your devotion carried faithfully to the altar. I am weary, my love, but there is no rest in me until I see your face again. I set my course home without delay, and though the road may be long, I will not tarry. Every step from this city I will take with the thought of you before me. I will not linger in marketplaces, nor waste a moment in idle distraction. Whatever dangers or delays may rise, I will cut through them with one purpose: to return to your side. You have ever been my guiding star, Ophelia. Even now, when the shadows of doubt press close, it is the memory of your laughter, your touch, your quiet strength that keeps me steady. Please hold fast until I come to you. By all the gods, I will see you soon. That I swear. Ever yours, Icarus. Icarus. 3. The letter was sealed with trembling hands, the ink still smudging faintly where his quill had faltered. Icarus pressed it into the courier's hands with more force than he intended. Straight to the village, he said. Into Ophelia's hands, if you can. Not a moment wasted. The courier nodded solemnly and disappeared into the crush of Aberanth's morning streets. Still, the act of sending the letter brought no calm. If anything, the weight in Icarus's chest only deepened. He returned to the inn where his companions waited. The common room smelled of hearth smoke and broth, of steel and sweat. Bram polished the edge of his axe. Garin leaned back in his chair with the quiet readiness of a man waiting for a fight, and Luke sat with his map spread across the table, tracing lines with one calloused finger. They all looked up when Icarus entered. The weight of last night's conversation hung heavy between them. Lior's words, and the question that had cut him open. When was the last you heard from Ophelia? I've sent word ahead, Icarus said without preamble. His voice was firm, but his hands trembled as he braced them against the table. But that won't be enough. Even if I ride hard, changing horses at every waypoint, it will be 7 days before I reach her. 7 days if fortune favours me. That's too long. The dwarf growled low in his throat. Then we ride harder. She'll hold on until you come. But Luke shook his head and tapped the map. Not the road, the river. All three turned to him. The ranger's expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp with conviction. He tapped again, tracing the ribbon of blue ink that curved east out of Aberanth. From here, the current carries fast and strong. We can hire a cutter, ride the river down. We won't be able to reach your village directly. The water's narrow, too soon for a vessel, but it will take us to a trade post a 6 hours ride away. He looked up, steady. By river, even in foul weather, it's a 6-day trip at most. I've done it in 3. Bram's brows shot up. 3 days, gods above. That's near a miracle. It's no miracle, Luke replied evenly. It's the current. The river will bear us if we let it. For the first time since the temple, Icarus felt something sharp and bright break through the fog of dread. Hope. A chance, however slim, to cut through time's cruel grip. He gripped the edge of the map, knuckles white. Then we take the river, he said, his voice fierce with resolve. Garin rose from his chair, his expression grim but certain. Then it's settled. We ride the waters. The dwarf thumped the flat of his axe against the table. I'll take oar or sail, whatever's needed. Just point me at the boat. The ranger began rolling up the map, already moving with purpose. Then we'd best make for the docks. If we're lucky, we'll have a vessel before the sun sets. Icarus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. For the first time in days, he did not feel trapped by the slowness of the world. There was a path forward, swift and sure. A chance to reach Ophelia before the shadows closed in. Still, even as his companions rose to prepare, Liore's voice lingered like a thorn in his chest. When was the last you heard from Ophelia? And though the river promised speed, he feared the answer might come too late. Icarus. The riverfront was alive with sound and motion. The air carried the damp, earthen smell of fresh water mixed with tar, wet rope, and wood smoke. Barges, ferries, and cutters bobbed against the piers, their hulls groaning as cargo was rolled aboard. Dockhands shouted, gulls wheeled overhead, and children darted between wagons with baskets of bread for the labourers. Icarus led his companions through the throng until they came to a modest cutter tied off near the end of the dock. Its hull was narrow and lean, built for swiftness more than bulk, and the name Silverfin was painted across the bow in fading white. A wiry man with a scar across his jaw stood watch at the gangplank, arms folded. "Captain?" Icarus asked. "That's me," the man replied in a gravelled voice. "What's your business?" "We need passage," Icarus said, steady and respectful. "Downriver to Greyhaven." The captain's eyes swept over the party, lingering on the dwarf's axe, the fighter's broad shoulders, and the ranger's bow. "Not much space aboard, and I don't feed passengers." "We'll bring our own food," Icarus assured him. "We'll sleep on the deck if we must, and we'll work. My companions are strong, loading cargo, hauling rope, whatever needs doing." He pressed 5 gold pieces into the man's calloused hand. "For your trouble." The captain weighed the coins with a thoughtful hum before nodding. 5 gold, strong backs, and no complaints about sleeping under the stars. "You've bought yourselves a place. We cast off before sundown. Get to work," Bram chuckled, clapping Icarus on the back. "Well bargained, lad. Better than a week in the saddle." They joined the sailors at once, heaving crates of dried beans, rolling barrels of lamp oil, and tying down bundles of timber. By the time the last cargo was stowed, sweat slicked their brows, but the cutter rocked light and steady beneath them. The crew loosed the mooring lines, and with a push of poles against the riverbed, the Silverfin drifted free of the dock. Oarsmen guided her into the current, and soon the sail was raised to catch the evening breeze. The cutter glided smoothly along the wide brown ribbon of water, Aberanth's sprawl shrinking behind them as lanterns flickered to life along its streets. Icarus lingered at the stern, hands tight on the rail. The current tugged the vessel forward, as though the river itself hastened him home. The ranger joined him, eyes on the darkening horizon. "If the weather stays fair, we'll see Greyhaven before your last letter arrives." Then, "Luke, May, the river be kind," Icarus said quietly. The Silverfin pressed on into the gathering night, carrying them eastward toward whatever waited at journey's end. Icarus. The days on the river passed in a rhythm of work and quiet reflection. From dawn until the sun dipped low, Icarus and his companions laboured alongside the cutter's crew. They heaved barrels of grain, secured bundles of timber, and tied lines with precision, their muscles straining with effort, yet moving in harmony with the vessel. Even Bram, who grumbled about the tediousness of knots, found satisfaction in the steady labour, while Garin kept watch over the deck, ever alert for obstacles in the water or shifting currents. Luke guided the cutter along the swift flow of the river, pointing out submerged logs, sandbars, and the occasional sharp turn in the channel. Icarus, for all his fatigue, felt a strange steadiness in the work. The boat's gentle roll, the current, tugging insistently downstream, and the shared rhythm of the crew brought a measure of calm to the tension coiled tight in his chest. Each exertion, each pull of rope or lift of a barrel, seemed to carry him closer to home, closer to Ophelia. But as night fell, and the campfires of other travellers twinkled along the banks, Icarus would steal away to the edge of the deck. He tried, with all his focus, to reach out into the darkness, to sense the presence Liore had hinted might have claimed his soul. He closed his eyes, let the wind curl around his hair, and stretched his senses, calling silently for that guidance, that unseen tether. And yet he found nothing. No force, no hand, no voice. Only the river's gentle murmur and the scent carried on the evening breeze. Her scent. He inhaled deeply and imagined the perfume of Ophelia's hair mingling with the herbs of her apothecary. The faint sweetness of her presence lingering as though she were beside him on the deck. His heart clenched at the thought, the ache mingling with relief. At least he knew her there in some small, intangible way, even across leagues of land and river. He would open his eyes, gaze upon the dark water, and whisper her name into the wind. The moon cast its silver light across the rippling surface, painting the river like a trail of liquid light leading them eastward. Icarus felt the pull of the current echo in his chest, urging him forward. Forward to Greyhaven, forward to the last leg of the journey, the final stretch home. Each night, as his companions slept under tarps or curled on blankets on the deck, he would stand there, letting the breeze carry memories of her, the curve of her smile, the warmth of her hands, the quiet laughter that had once filled their home. The longing was bitter and sweet, a reminder of what drove him onward and what he fought to protect. By the third day, the trade village of Greyhaven rose from the banks, its wooden piers and modest roofs, small but bustling against the backdrop of the river. Icarus felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The river had delivered them swiftly, but the journey was far from over. Greyhaven was only 6 hours from his village. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a brief smile. He was moving, and he was not alone. The presence he sought, whatever it was, remained elusive. But for now, the wind carried the memory of Ophelia, and that was enough to steel him for the final push.